Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Hey, Rach.
Oh,
Hi,
your hair
ladies.
looks great, Rachel.
Oh, I like your hair.
Yeah, you look great.
Oh, thank you. Happy birthday, Jen.
Thank you.
Rachel, it's good to see your face.
I know. So good to see you, Tabs. We miss
That
you
was a
here in
little colder.
Arizona.
A little colder in Montana.
Hello and welcome to Table for Five with No Reservations. Take a seat at the table for a fresh, sweet, salty, tart, and pleasantly bitter conversation.
Hello, and thank you for taking a seat at the table. Joining us tonight, we have Rachel Lack. We're doing a standalone episode, and we're really excited that she's joined us. Seated at the table with me tonight is Kim McIsaac.
Hello.
Tabitha Cabrera.
Hello.
Jamie Ramos.
Hey.
Rachel Flanagan.
Hey, everybody.
I'm Jen Dunn, and joining us is Rachel Lack.
Hi.
Friend.
Hello. Thank you for having me, ladies. I'm very excited.
We are so excited to have you here. Rachel, could you introduce yourself and tell our listeners a little about you and your family?
Yes, my name is Rachel Lack. I am a documentary filmmaker, and I have a son, Henry, who's 11, and he's autistic. I live in Arizona with Henry and my husband, Steve. Henry was diagnosed right before he turned 3.
Rach, when you said 11, I about fell off my chair. I'm like, no.
Yeah, he's little. He's little for his age, but yeah, he's 11 already. And I can't believe I've been on this journey for 8 years. When he first got diagnosed, I started looking at pages on Facebook, and a lot of the kids were 11, 12 that I started looking at. And I kept thinking back then, like, what were those kids like when they were Henry's age? Were they the same? How is Henry going to be in 8-10 years? Is he going to be just like them? Is he going to be able to talk? Is he going to, like, what's he going to be doing? And now we're here, we're at that point. Now I would be considered a veteran mom, as what I would see those. So it's just strange for me to be there right now. So
It's really cool you say that, because that's like, we'll get into your documentary in a little bit and talk about that, but just seeing that perspective of like, how do you get there? I think that's like such a mystery for all of our kids, is like, what is my kid gonna be like? Because my kid may be the same as a kid who's like an adult and highly severe when he was 2 or 3, but adult functioning in the world may have also acted exactly the same. So it's kind of crazy. So can you tell us a little bit about how the diagnosis process started with Henry, when you guys started suspecting autism and all that fun stuff?
yeah, so Henry hit all of his milestones on time. He sat up at 2 months. He crawled at 6 months, started walking at 11 months, was fully walking by 13 months, because he always pulled himself up at 11 months and then would walk, and then he would fall down and then crawl back over to like something and stand up. So he never actually stood up on his own until 13 months. So that's when we say he was fully walking. And he did have some words. He started to say some words about 12 months. And he had about 10 to 15 words up until about 20 months. And then that's when we started to see the regression, was in about 20 months. And we didn't really notice it at first because Henry had a food aversion, and so he didn't feed himself until he was 2.5. And so we started food therapy at 12 months. And this is long before autism was mentioned, anything like that. And so we were so focused on his food and his eating that we kind of forgot and didn't realize that he had lost some words. And it was his feeding therapist that mentioned to us, I think at about 2, and she's like, I haven't heard him talking, because she was also a speech therapist. And she's like, I haven't heard him talking in a while. And, again, you're focused on one thing. And feeding was so important because he was drinking Pediasure, 4 things of Pediasure a day. He would only eat the same pureed. It was Earth's Best, and it had to be Earth's Best. Even if we put Gerber in an Earth's Best bottle, he still knew and would throw it up. Like, I'm like, how do you know? It's in the jar, but it's a food aversion, and so it was a texture or a taste. Like, he just knew. And he would eat some yogurt. So like, going out to eat was really hard. We had to always have food, and also getting him to eat. He had to watch Blue's Clues as he ate, and we had to like feed him. And at one point in time, Steve was like jumping around trying to keep him occupied while I was feeding him. And I mean, it was so hard to get him to eat. And eventually at 2.5, and we don't even know why, he started at a Montessori school. And he was around kids, I guess 24 typical kids, and his teachers were amazing, and they helped feed him and he just started chewing on his own. And his feeding therapist told us, she's like, now he may regress. Like, this is really great that he's eating. So let's be excited, but he may regress. And he never did. So we were very lucky. But
Do you want to go kiss her all the time?
yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. But he would only eat at school. And so the teacher would give us like at the Montessori school, they made the food there. A lot of the food that they grew in the garden, like this was amazing Montessori school. I remember one day they gave us stewed tomatoes that he ate at school, and he would not touch them at home. And it was like a month. He would do it at school for a month, and then he would start doing it at home. And that was even with other things. Like if he didn't learn to jump until he was 5, but he would do it at school, and then he would do it at home slowly. And then he actually was a really good eater after that. And we were very lucky. So, but yeah, that was his food. And basically at 2, sorry, that was a tangent. At 2, we went in for his 2-year appointment and filling out, as you guys all know, we fill out the form. And I remember the pointing. That's what stood out to me, because I was like, I don't remember the last time he pointed. And I remember that he used to point, but I do not remember. And I remember Steve, my husband, was like, why are you obsessing about that? And I was like, because that's a sign of autism. One of them that I know, not pointing. And I was like, when was the last time he pointed? The doctor came to us and was like, well, he's not talking, doesn't have very many words and stuff. So let's send him to get evaluated. And so I was nervous. I was like, oh my gosh. And we found a developmental pediatrician that only had a month waiting list. So I should have known from that that she was not that good.
Yeah.
Again, I just came off my chair and then I was like, oh.
In Phoenix, having a 1-month waiting list, that's unreal. So we saw her the next month. November was his birthday. So in December of 2013, we went and saw her. And first of all, Henry was doing things that we had never seen him do before. He was playing with a doll. He was actually imitating the developmental pediatrician and feeding the doll and pointing at things that we had never seen him not point, but like touch things and stuff. And we're like, who is this kid? He doesn't play with that at home. So he was doing things that we'd never seen before. And she told us at the end that she didn't think he was autistic, just that he had OCD and anxiety. And she also told us that he's not eating like a 2-year-old. And we should stop giving him Pediasure because he will eat when he's hungry. I immediately went click. I turned my brain off when she said that. I said, this is not a good developmental pediatrician. I'm like, she sees autistic kids. How can she tell somebody that they were going to eat when they're hungry? And so the minute she said that to me, I was like, no, we're not coming back here. She's like, I want to see him in 4 months. But Steve and I both left and was like, nope, we're not.
We don't need to pre-book today.
No, that's what they did. They wanted to. Yeah, but I was really happy. And she wanted to put him on, my 2-year-old, on medication for his anxiety. And I was like, no, I'm not putting my 2-year-old on medication for anxiety. So I was happy. I was like, okay, he's not autistic. That's good. Yeah. So maybe it's just a speech. And she said it's probably a speech delay. So I'm like, woohoo, it's a speech delay. And she told us about early intervention. So we did sign him up for early intervention. So that was the good thing. And Henry was, very social. And he hadn't really gone into his own little world yet. Early interventionists were like, oh no, he's, it's probably just a speech delay. And I don't know if they're allowed to tell us that it's autism, but they weren't thinking it was. So it wasn't until like 6 months later, he was 2.5. That's when we started seeing more signs. He wasn't answering to his name. He wasn't playing with other kids. He was going into his own little world. And his obsession was string. And that's what he stims on. You'll see pictures of him
Yeah,
always string.
always
Always
has a string.
twirling
Yeah.
string.
Yeah.
And that's when it started. And he was always, and I remember being at the cottage and my parents and all my family was like, look at him. He can just sit there for like 45 minutes playing with a string and be all content. That's great. And I said, no, that's not, I don't like to say the word normal, but I said that at the time. I'm like, that's not normal. Like, he needs to get evaluated. I mean, he even helped my dad roll up a 100-foot rope through with my dad. He loved that. I mean, he stood there. I have video of him doing that. So it was the summer of 2014, and we were lucky. The wait list was 6 months, but we got on a cancellation list, and because he was young, there was a cancellation. So in October of 2014, we got another diagnosis, and this time it was autism. And before that, I started Googling and YouTube and starting freaking out because all you saw was like the very extreme and teenagers and like pull up still and not do it, and you just saw kind of the scary. That's when I started going on pages and seeing other kids. I'm like, how were they when they were Henry's age? Is my child going to be like that? And what, so I started doing the Google, and you should never do that. Never do that.
Stay off the Google.
Yeah, and YouTube. And also right before the diagnosis, I started to look at documentaries, and I did not see any documentaries on it. Or if I did see documentaries, it was from parents talking about it years later. And so I decided I'm going to film myself going through this whole journey. But yeah, so that's when I decided to film myself the day before his diagnosis.
I think that's so cool because I also come from a filmmaking background. That's what I went to school for. And I didn't do a lot of documentary, but I remember thinking early on in my son's, the whole process, like, I was like, maybe I should record myself, because I always thought about doing that, like maybe recording myself through pregnancy and doing like some sort of documentary. But I was in such denial that I just didn't want it to be autism so bad that I felt like if I did something like that, that it would like manifest it somehow, or, and so I just think it's so cool that you had the wherewithal to do that. And also the fact that you knew that something was up with that developmental pediatrician, because like I would have been like, okay, I was in such denial at the beginning. So
you want to hang on, you want to cling on to that hope, right? So that's that false hope. I got the same thing. She wasn't taught, all of those things. And but when you were talking about him playing with the dolls, how that was out of the ordinary, that reminded me of Kaya's diagnosis, because it was the one thing she wouldn't do was she didn't know how to play with anything. So I remember they're like, well, she's just spinning the spoon in the bowl. And I'm like, mix the freaking bowl. Like in my head, I was screaming to do the play. So very, opposite in the doctor's office. So is that what led you into documentary filmmaking, or were you kind of dabbling into this prior to Henry's pre-diagnosis?
So I went to film school back in the early 2000s, and I decided, shortly through film school that I wanted to do smaller films and have a smaller crew. I didn't want to be on a giant Hollywood film because I just felt like you don't get to know everyone that you're working with. So I started watching documentaries, and I love them. So the first documentary I did is called The Activist Within, and I did it shortly after I got married in 2008. And right when that happened in Arizona, where I live, Prop 102 was passed. And then Prop 8 was passed at the same time in California, denying same-sex couples marriage. So I was like, why can I marry the person I love and everyone can't? So I decided to do a documentary about that. Through the filming, I filmed a whole bunch of marches. And through that, I realized I was becoming an activist as well. So I filmed myself, and I did one of the walks with them. So as I was editing it, I realized I couldn't edit myself. I can't, that's the worst thing to do. So one of my friends from film school, Annie, I got a hold of her we had lost track, and I found her on Facebook. So we became friends again, and she was always a really great editor. So I was like, do you want a job editing? And she's like, of course. So That was back in 2010. So we've been working together since 2010. And we were working on a documentary about travel because I've been a big traveler my whole life. I have been to all 7 continents and 35 countries. So we were starting right before Henry was diagnosed, we were starting a documentary called Got the Travel Bug. As we were filming, we actually were on a trip right before Henry was diagnosed. And we decided that the autism documentary was more important than the travel. And I knew I wasn't going to be able to travel as much having a child with autism. So we decided, you know, through that trip, I was with Annie. We were filming a trip with my niece and my mom and my sister. We were traveling together. It was my niece's first international continent, and it was my last international continent. So we were traveling that, and we decided that the autism was more important. And so I filmed probably a week, I think it was a week after we got back. Then I filmed myself the day before the documentary. Steve got the call while I was in Australia that Henry's diagnosis was moved up to like the middle of October, and this was the beginning of October. So it worked out that I was going to be back, and I would have flown back for it if I was away. Then we decided to do the documentary.
So you follow 10 children, Arizona and Massachusetts, correct?
Yeah.
How did you pick these 10 children? Did you know their parents? How did you connect with them to create this documentary?
Yeah, so about 6 months in, I realized that autism really is a spectrum, and Henry was not going to be, I wasn't going to be able to show the spectrum with just Henry. So I went online through one of the autism groups in Arizona. I had actually met a few moms. We were all new to the group, new to the diagnosis. And so 2 of those moms in my mom group said they would be filmed. And then I kind of put a message out in one of our Arizona groups. And so a few more said they wanted to be involved. And then one of the moms I knew from Arizona, she used to live in Arizona and then moved to Massachusetts. Her son was diagnosed 5 days before Henry. And so she said she was part of a group and she could get a few other people involved too that would want to be involved. So that's when I was like, oh, this will be great to show 2 different states and show the difference. I didn't know at the time that Arizona and Massachusetts are 2 of the better states for services. So we're actually showing the kids in services and stuff. I would love to get states that don't have as good services as well. So that's something I'm
Come up
I was
here,
like,
Rachel.
Travis is
Lack.
right here. Rachel,
Come
you know,
on over to Montana, Rachel.
Okay.
It's not good.
I will.
It's not good.
Well, we will chat more after this because, yeah, I know that you left Arizona for Montana, and
So how long have you been following these kids? I think that's the coolest part, that you're following like through their
I was gonna say to that as well. What's the age range between the youngest to the oldest?
It's 3 years between the youngest and the oldest. The oldest is Connor. He's in Arizona, and the youngest is Savannah, and she's in Arizona as well.
She's adorable.
Yes.
She's
my
fun to
God.
watch. I like watching them.
And boys, yeah.
When they go
How
on and
many-
do their videos. It's
How-
neat to see that because like you were saying about sort of a glimpse into the future. And we all know that none of our children are the same. And you know, what Kaya's like at 12 is maybe not what Celia's going to be like or what Nora's going to be like or whatever. Look at Rachel. Oh. But
Which
it's kinda
Rachel
like
did my
I
face
said
do
to
body language?
yeah, I saw you tense a little at 12. But you know, even like with Kimmy, like that looking that far ahead, it's kind of nice to see that roadmap, you know, and
Yeah.
have a little bit of that, you know, so that's interesting. So you chose them and you started following them. How long are you following them for?
We're going to follow them up through adulthood.
Into
And at the
adulthood.
beginning, when I first contacted them, I didn't know what we were going to do with the documentary. I thought that it might be just a few years. I also thought of one of my favorite documentaries is 7 Up. I don't know if you guys have seen it. It's a BBC documentary, and they have followed like a kids at 7, and then they follow them again every 7 years. So it's 7 Up, 14 Up, 21 Up. And I just thought that was wonderful. My favorite part of documentaries actually is the end, when they
Yeah.
show where they are now or what they've done. Like, I always want to know what's going on with them now. Did it work? What's going on? So when I started following these families, I said to them, I'm like, how would you feel if we film these kids, your kids, every 6 months up until they're adults. And these families didn't know us. They didn't know who we're just filming them. And they did become my family. Like they're all my friends and stuff like that. But we came into their house.
I was going to ask, did you go into their home?
Yeah, we went into their house and filmed them. And we didn't, like, I was meeting them for the first time when I went into their house, and it was Annie and I. So it was just wonderful. And the kids were all like 3 to 5 when I started filming them. And they were so adorable. Oh my gosh. And they loved, I would bring a few GoPros, and they loved the GoPros. And I would just let them, a lot of times I would just let them play with the GoPro because, they're not going to drop it or anything. But if they did, it would be okay, So I have a lot of footage of the kids like running around and kid views, which is wonderful. And yeah, they didn't know what's going to happen. And again, we've been filming for 8 years, and we have a COVID series. Like COVID actually helped us get some episodes out, and Jen Dunn is in it. We did an international one, and so she's in it. And
Hold on. First of all, I didn't realize it was a recorded thing because we all know how technical Jen at the table is, right? So I looked about as lovely as I do right now, and I'm like, oh, this is a video. Well, we're gonna see how good Annie really is. We're gonna see how good she was. Great. She did the best she could. But that was fun, even for me to go back and do the checkup on it and see how far in the difference in that time. I think it was a year, right? A year.
It was a year. Yeah. And I tell people now, new parents that are starting out, I tell them, like, just film yourself, even if you do just a diary, just even if it's just for you to see and you don't want to show anyone else, you can see how much you grow, because as you guys all know, we grow as parents. Like, we're different than we were the day that our children were diagnosed. Like, I am not the same. And I don't think I could get the same emotion that I got when I did it the day before. And actually, the hardest one was 3 days after the diagnosis. I could only film myself for 5 minutes, and I was crying. I couldn't talk. Like, right after the diagnosis, I had to text my family. I couldn't call anyone because I was just going to burst into tears, and not anything that's just my emotions. And so I texted my family, and I still remember feeding Henry lunch because it was the morning, and like looking out the window, and the first thing I thought about was, is he ever gonna, like, I wanted to be a baseball mom, a soccer mom, a sports mom, and I was crying over the sink thinking, is he ever gonna play baseball? Because baseball is my favorite sport. And I'd like to tell people listening, there are special needs sports, and Henry does them all. And I am a baseball mom now, and I watch him, and it might not be the same as a typical 11-year-old, but he is now throwing the ball. He's now playing catch with his buddies, which he didn't do for a long time. This is the first time that he goes out and plays catch. Like, I'm tearing up right now because he's been playing baseball for 6 years, and this is the first time. I want to tell people, like, just, it might seem hard the first time. Like, Henry actually was crying. They have the kids stand at the very beginning for the national anthem on the baseline, and I was looking at all these kids standing, and these are all 4 to 6 year olds. Okay, Henry was in this little group. He was 5, so it was 4 to 7. And there were these kids standing on the baseline, and here I am trying to get him to stand, and he's having a meltdown, and he's biting me, and I'm almost in tears. I'm like, are we going to be able to make it? Is he going to do this? I don't know. And by the end of the hour, he was doing it, and he was hitting the ball and stuff, and he loved to run the bases. That was his favorite. I remember one of the coaches saying to me, don't give up. He did great. He will get there. And
oh my God, kiss that guy too.
I know. And the coach is still there, and he still says how much, Henry has grown and stuff. I mean, they're amazing. Yeah. And by the end of that season, so the season is like 7 games. By the end of the season, Henry was running up to the line to stand for the national anthem. And
that's amazing.
And if we miss the national anthem, it kind of pushes him, it kind of messes up his routine. So we have to always make sure we're there for the beginning.
I
And
think there is something about those. It's Miracle League that you go to,
yeah,
right?
it's a Miracle
So
League.
we don't have that here. I'm in Canada for our listeners. And I know that there's Special Olympics everywhere. I know that's not to Canada, but
Yeah.
I just put my daughter in that. And there's some sort of ease that comes with it because I don't have to worry about what other people would find in odd behavior. Not worry, but the
Yeah.
spectacles of the typical parents, right? And she's dimming her little heart out and dancing in the middle. They just go with her dancing in the middle. I mean, it's not it's so being in that setting where you don't feel sort of the eyes and the pressure of it is nice. And I have to assume that's like Miracle League.
Yeah. I mean, even the volunteers are great. They start at 10 years old volunteering
That's fantastic.
all the way up to like adults and stuff. And it's amazing to see 10-year-olds out there, and they are out there. Like,
Well, Jesse
volunteering
thinks
and
that's like
stuff.
the coolest. He thinks like kids, because they're
Yeah.
just a little bit older than him now, but he just feels like he's one of the guys. Like,
Yeah.
and it's just so nice, like Jen was saying, for one, not to be like a hassle. You're not a hassle there because everyone's doing what they want. And to have other people actively helping, like that guy, like encouraging him and be like, he'll get there. Like other people saying that instead of it, like we tried some typical sports and it was like just me. Like I'm just the one like trying to get him to do things. It's so nice having those volunteers and people that like care and want to help your kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we just did on Saturday, we just did a special football camp because the Super Bowl is here. And so there's a foundation that follows the Super Bowl and does like a football camp for the local kids. And I didn't know how Henry was going to be. And for us, we just always try. You never know what they're going to like unless you try. And you know what? Henry only stayed an hour and we left, and that's fine.
Yeah.
And nobody cared that we left, and we left on a happy note. He said he was all done. And so we left, and he wasn't upset. He was actually happy. He was smiling. He learned how to throw a football and catch a football. And
He's like, we're done here.
Yeah. Yeah. And then
Here
he's
we
like,
go.
we're done. Yes.
We're done.
Give me a jersey, people.
Yeah. And but it was amazing because it was like the ASU football team was there helping
That's
him.
awesome.
And I just was like, oh, okay, you guys are college students and the Super Bowl is here and you're taking time out of your Saturday to be here, like 9 o'clock in the morning to be here. And that was amazing. And they were great. And there was also a high school team. I don't know which high school team it was. There was also a high school team there. And Henry loves the big guys. So he was in heaven because there's all these tall, big guys. He just loves them.
Jen
So
likes them too. If you could let her know next time.
yeah. But
High school might be a little young.
Oh, okay, yes.
But we
be
missed
clear.
that part. Rachel and I skipped right over. They were high school students.
Whoops.
Thank you, Kimmy. Sorry,
Yes,
listeners,
thanks,
don't think
Kim.
I'm a creep. I do like older men, by the way.
Sorry, Rach.
Maybe
Thanks,
the
Rach. You
You
coaches
got any
would be
big
more.
coaches?
yeah.
Appreciate the help. You're gonna land me in jail.
No, it was college.
Depends on the state.
The attorney from the table. I think I know, like with Kaya at gymnastics before we did the Special Olympics, all the teen girls that were there, she liked them as well. I think she looked up to them. They were teenagers. She kind of followed the pack. She really enjoyed that. So that was fun to watch her do that. She learns by looking at, like, watching other people. So these students would come in and show them, and it worked out really well.
It's amazing when you've got the volunteers that come. In Arizona, we've got spring training. So a lot of times the baseball teams are here. And sometimes, one time we had the Cubs come. And one time we had the Royals come, like professional baseball players coming
Yes.
to Miracle League. And so, of course, those are they're tall, they're 6 feet. And so Henry is in heaven, and they'll do like a tunnel. So the kids will run through the tunnel and stuff. I mean, it's so fun. And I recommend to everyone, if you have a Miracle League in your area, just go. Even if you don't have a special needs child, go and watch. I mean, it's just amazing to see the smiles on all the kids' faces.
We've done Miracle League for 2 years, and they just, like, we book them through the city, like community ed kind of stuff. And they just recently started 3 other types of classes by the same Miracle League organization. So we do a music class, and then they do an arts and crafts, and then a spring sampler. And all of them are just
Love it.
incredible and just as inclusive. And like, my cheeks hurt because there's like Celie Flanagan basically doing the worm under her blanket, and we're fine because she's next to Cooper Swenson doing the worm. under the parachute, and Landon is banging the drums, and I mean it's mayhem, and it's fine. The parents get to like sit with the back on the chair because only one has to stand by the door, another had the light switch. Like it's like we got this.
Yeah.
It's so nice to be able to like lean in when you arrive because you're among our people.
It's
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah. And I love watching the videos of Celie and Cooper and stuff doing that. It's amazing to watch that.
And that's the musical talent right there.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's
So-
something.
Rachel, back to the documentary real fast. Like, what have you learned and seen the most from? Because, like, I feel like, I mean, I've only known you the last couple of years, but like, I feel like I know these kids. Like,
I know, that's what I mean. Like when she puts her update, Savannah, Connor, those are the names I know. That Brendan,
Brendan, yeah.
yeah, those kids I tend to see the most.
Yeah.
But that's a great question, James. Yeah,
But it's crazy. I mean, like, really, you can see the spectrum through these kids,
Yeah.
and I mean,
yes.
it's pretty cool.
And we didn't know what was gonna happen with these kids at 3, 5.
You know what you're getting, did you?
No, we did not
No.
know. And so, that I was hoping that it was going to be the real spectrum, which it is. Like you've got Henry and Sam and Caleb that are kind of the more needs kids. And then you've got Brendan and Savannah and even now Connor. I mean, it's crazy how much he's progressed. I mean, I can talk about Brendan forever because he's pretty much what you would consider the like poster boy for early intervention, because now he's dancing and acting. And I saw Gina's mom today because he was at the event on Saturday, and so there was a lot of people that recognized him from the Dharma videos, and a lot of the coaches thought that he was like a student coach. They didn't realize that he was a participant. And again, autism is an invisible disability, and he does have autism, and he doesn't have as many needs as everyone else, but he still has his needs. And he said to his mom, like, I didn't know what to say at that time. Like, they thought he was a coach, but he didn't know how to tell them I'm a participant, and so that's kind of like where he doesn't necessarily understand how to answer all the questions and stuff. So but it's hard because our kids have the invisible disability, and a lot of times when people show the event, a lot of people show the kids with Down syndrome. They don't show the autistic kids because just by looking at them you don't think they have a disability, but looking at a child with Down syndrome, you can see they have Down syndrome. So it's just hard sometimes with our kids that may not have the needs that the other kids have. So, but Brendan, I mean, I could talk about, and Savannah. Savannah doesn't have an IEP because at the school, they don't think she has autism. So she doesn't have an IEP. Sebastian doesn't have an IEP. So there's a few kids that have the less needs that don't have IEPs. But then there's like Henry and Sam who are non-speaking and have more needs and stuff like that. But I've learned so much from the parents. I've learned so much like from the moms. And as I was filming them, I was able to learn what to do for Henry. I started filming. Brendan was non-speaking when I first met him, and he had a device. And so I learned from Gina about his talker, his AAC device. And so I was able to kind of push our speech therapist because I learned from all these moms that had already Connor had a device already because he's the older one. And so I learned from Carrie and Gina, like how to advocate. I really learned how to advocate from these moms and stuff that were a little bit further along than I was. So I hope that the documentary can help other parents learn to advocate.
I think it does two things, Rachel. I think you learn how to advocate and you learn how to navigate.
Yes.
Because it's a lot, and I think you're navigating and advocating side by side the whole way as you're trying to find your footing. So that's great. It's amazing. We love following it. Where can everyone find you, Rachel?
So we have Facebook. Across the Spectrum is the name of the doc. So you can find us on Facebook, Across the Spectrum, the doc. You can find us on Instagram. It's my production company is Pearling Place Production. So under Instagram, I am Pearling Place. And then our YouTube channel is Pearling Place Productions.
And we'll put all the links in the descriptions for everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us, friend. It was great chatting with you. We're going to see you
good
in
to see you.
April. We're going to
Yeah,
see
your face.
I am so excited to see you all and give you all big hugs.
Yeah.
Yes.
In
That
Rachel,
would be
April.
great.
we talk so much about how like there's, we just kind of are so comfortable with one another that we could walk by each other, sort of like, I don't think Jamie and I said hello till we were like hours in, because it's just so natural. And just being with you, I mean, it's like soul sister, and it's
Yes.
just so great
Yeah.
to mom alongside you. I mean, it really
Rachel
is
and
great.
I traveled to Minnesota last
Yes,
year.
Last year,
together.
that's right.
Yes.
Yes, we did.
I can't
And
wait
we
to
sat in the airport for like 3 hours.
because we got delayed. Yeah.
Got stuck.
Yes,
Well,
yes,
but
we
It's
did.
funny. It's funny, Rachel, how you were just saying about Henry liking the guys, because I remember when we met up in October, Henry like Neil came with us, and he like turned to Neil and like gave him a hug.
Yes. Henry is a hugger, so he will hug
Makes
everyone.
sense,
And
yeah.
I just loved meeting you and Alyssa in October.
That was
And
awesome.
I'm glad that Alyssa, kind of let him hug her, because I know she's not as big of a hugger, and Henry is a hugger. So he's gonna just walk up, which can be hard, like he doesn't know.
Well, it's funny
strangers
because
either.
when we first got there, she was kind of like, I guess I'll allow you to hug me. But then when we were leaving, she was like more like receptive to it, because
Yes.
makes sense. But yeah, it was funny. I was like, you never know what her reaction's gonna be.
I can't wait. It's coming
love.
fast.
They
Two
were
months.
really cute though.
Yes, they were so cute, especially like the height difference and the stuff. It
Yeah.
was just so cute. I was like, oh my gosh. I remember in the episode you were talking about it was natural for us to see each other, and it didn't
Mhm.
feel bad,
Like awkward or anything. Yeah, it was just.
it just, you're seeing
Because
your
you're a
friends.
gem of a human being, Rachel Lack.
yes.
That's why.
Yes.
You really are.
yes.
I miss you.
Miss you too, Tabs.
T-minus 60-something days. We'll see you soon, Rach.
I know. I'm so excited. Yay.
All right, everyone. Well, thank you for joining us at the table, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us at the table for this episode. Check out the description to find where you can sign up for our newsletter, how to become a supporter, and find links to us individually. Join us next Monday for more, and while you wait, check out our content on Facebook and Instagram. If you are enjoying the podcast, please make sure to subscribe and rate and review us wherever you listen. To contact us, you can email us at tablefor5podcast@gmail.com. We can't wait to sit with you again.